Oh, welcome to the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. You figured that out because you're smart, and it's also the name of the show. I wasn't going to do a show today. I woke up feeling like death, and I got through my day. And then I got a text from video guy Amadeo, and he said, Russ, what do you need on the thumbnail? And I said, Amadeo, I don't think a show is going to happen. And Amadeo said to me, Russ, think of the people. What will the people say if you don't do a show? And I said, I think they're going to go along with their day just perfectly fine. To which Amadeo said, no, Russ, think of the commenters. What will they do without you going into a wonderful weekend on a fantastic Friday? And I said, you know what, Amadeo? I'll do it. All right, the conversation didn't go down exactly like that. And now, because I am running on fumes, I'm going to, live on the show for the first time ever, going to open up a can of Sheets coffee. It's a chocolate peanut butter iced coffee. I bought 2 of these like a week ago when I was in my travels, and I did not open it. I could tell you that the regular coffee at Sheets is significantly better than it used to be. I'd argue that it's maybe better than Wawa's now. All right, we're gonna give this a chance. Again, the Sheets Brothers Coffees chocolate peanut butter. All right, here we go. This is unadulterated. This is an unfiltered take. It's very sweet, but it's very good. I think I'm going to make it through the show. It says 1% of sales are donated to help kids. I don't know who the kids are. Here we go. Every year, Sheets for Kids provides support, hope, joy, and happiness to children in need in our communities. To learn more, visit sheetsforthekids.org. All right. Listen, I'm not expecting Sheets to sponsor this show when they open their location in Limerick, but I may be expecting some coffee. Or I was told that there may be swag at some point, so the coffee's good. It's good coffee. All right. We got a lot to get into today, okay? We're going to be very, very fair about our analysis on today's show because there's a lot to get to. On one hand, we have to discuss whether or not the Eagles are going to bounce back this weekend or if the pit of misery and hell that we have been falling into, by God, they're going straight to hell. Jalen Hurts, you no good son of a bitch. You can't complete a pass over the middle. That man has a family. You're trying to put A.J. Brown across the middle. By God, A.J. has a family. We're going to see if the Eagles are going to continue into that pit of misery and despair. We're going to find out if the Eagles are going to pull the nose up on the thing. We have a little bit of radio wars, too, as Jon Marks, now of 97.5 The Fanatic, took a little bit of a shot, a little targeted strike at the other station, at his former employer over at 94 WIP, at Joe Giglio. We'll break that down. Of course, we have to talk about what happened at the Xfinity Mobile Arena last night as the Flyers played a tough game, a tight game against a better and very good and very talented Vegas Golden Knights team. And it was one of their leaders and one of their highest paid players who ultimately made a mistake that doomed them and effectively lost them the game last night. They did get a point, but they very well could have gotten to 2 points because, as we know, when the Flyers now get to a shootout, despite many years of PTSD, we know that it's actually a good thing for the Flyers when they get to a shootout. We'll get to all of that and more on today's show. But before we do, I'm going to do something I haven't done in a long time. I'm going to go out to the comments to start the show. Let's go out here because I also realized that I was very behind on, having the comments pop up on the screen. So we'll go through a few here. Greg Bondarenko's here. Says, good afternoon, Russ Joy fans. Hello, Greg Bondarenko. Chris Freed says, Sharon Moore is a role model for what not to become. We are not touching that story. I still don't know what's fact and what's fiction. What I can tell you from the stuff that I think is accurate. What's the best way to put this? I think that we've started to, all right, how do I do this in a way that doesn't get myself canceled or get myself in trouble? Okay, I got it. I think at some point along the way, society started using mental health as an excuse for making bad choices. And they started using this excuse that mental health, this person was having mental health issues, is being used as a way to try to get them out of making really poor choices. And without going into too many details and accusations, it seems like Sherrod Moore made a lot of bad choices. And he's going to have to live with those choices. But mental health? Oh, I'm not so sure. There was a thing about how when the police got involved, he was in a bad space mentally. And then there were the accusations about him going off to somebody's house and all that kind of stuff. At some point, I think it makes a little bit more sense to live a life where you don't wade into very murky waters. I think that oftentimes is probably the safer play. Is it as fun? I don't know. Is allegedly having an affair with somebody in your workplace a great idea? I would say definitively no. That seems like a terrible idea. But it seems as though he allegedly did such. And there are a lot of weird things that came out since then. So again, we're not going to touch that subject much. Just put out there. What happens if you just try to lead a decent existence? You try to whether you want to follow your religion's doctrine or you want to just, I don't know, try to be on the up and up with a basic set of moral standards. What if we just tried that for a change? And then maybe you could just live a pretty decent life and not have whatever the hell happened to him happen. I don't know. Just a thought. Amadeo is saying that I was lying about our conversation earlier. I said that I may have embellished a little bit. I may have changed some of the phrasing of things, but it's what he meant. Let's see. The OGJH says that TK whiff and Cooter puck watching was terrible. We'll get there a little bit later on. And JH also backs me up. It's true. My life was not complete before. It is now at this moment. Ford is here. I mean, geez, think about what would have happened to Ford. Ford and I, our sons play on the same travel soccer team. They have not played on the same team, in a game, for weeks now, which means that Ford and I have not really seen each other or talked in, I think, 2 weeks. Ford's probably miserable. This is our only way to communicate, and it's really kind of one-sided. Ford also wants to be involved in the Sheets thing in January. I've gotten intel that the Limerick Sheets, late January, maybe early February. Oh, I'll let you know when I know for sure. Tony Louie, thanks, Amadeo, for talking me into having the show. You know what? This is actually a good, and I didn't have this in the rundown, but I will talk about this real quick because I don't know where else we'd figure it out. So thank you to Darkwing McQuack. What a name. I'm telling you, man. You like to have a McQuack and you like a Darkwing, man. I love a good Darkwing, man. That's a lot of dark meat, man. Sometimes a lot of people don't think about the dark meat on the chicken, man. You got to enjoy it. Yeah, the Ty Baribo thing. I'm actually going to go there really quick. So for those of you who are aware, Philadelphia Union, they won their first round series, whatever you want to call it, against Chicago. Then nearly 3 weeks later, they played NYCFC in the conference semifinals. They lost. NYCFC lost to Lionel Messi and Inter Miami. Messi led Inter Miami to a win in MLS Cup over Thomas Müller, all-time German great, who was offered to the Union, and the Union were like, LOL, too much money. Ty Baribo was a huge part of the Philadelphia Union. He scored, I think it's 35 goals in 67 appearances for the Union since becoming a part of this team. And now he's being sold, reportedly, to DC United, another Eastern Conference team, for $4 million, which is a lot of money. A lot. Now, there are a whole bunch of reasons that could happen. The Union most notably made a signing of their own. They found a guy who I forget what league he was playing in. It was like an Ernst Tanner special. They found this guy who I believe is originally from Ghana, who was playing in Switzerland or Sweden or Austria, one of those countries. But he was playing over there, very little known, and they brought him in on a club record deal. So they clearly, in their minds, had a replacement for Ty Baribo. But it is kind of an interesting look to move a guy who is as successful for this team as he was. All that said, I will continue to trust Ernst Tanner, who definitely isn't running things over with the Philadelphia Union right now because he's on leave as they reopen the investigation into some of his comments. I can't imagine that he has anything to do with any of the decision-making right now. He's got his tootsie toes in the sand somewhere, I'm sure. I mean, I don't actually know, but come on, let's be real. Okay. Let's see. Jim Cochran says, I assume we'll be talking mostly about Union selling Ty Baribo. Well, there you go. You got your Union stuff. I'll probably bring somebody back on. Maybe I'll bring Jose on next week or the week after. What talk about some Union moves. I don't think it's actually the worst thing in the world. I don't mind roster overhaul from time to time. I'll be interested to see what the new guy can do. Let's see. Ford had a question about the coffee. I think peanut butter will taste very artificial. Tough to do peanut butter as a liquid taste. Wow. Okay. All right. Let's see. Chris Freed asks, will the Russ Joy Show get Waymo as a sponsor and hold an episode during a Waymo ride? That'd be pretty cool. So I don't know if I said this, and you guys can let me know in the comments if I did. So in January, I'm going away for a bit. I'm going to Vienna, and then I'm going to Barcelona. Both of those things are work related. And so like every time I go somewhere for work, I have this like grand idea in my head about taking my laptop and taking the microphone and the camera, and maybe a little tripod, and trying to do like an on location. So in my mind, the last time I was in Vegas, I was like, I'll just go do a show from the Vegas Strip, and I'll either try to find a Wi-Fi network that's strong enough or use like the mobile hotspot on my phone. And then it didn't happen. When I was in Toronto, I had the worst internet I've ever had at like any hotel, apartment, whatever. It was atrocious. And so I did it with the Rogers Center behind me, but it wasn't that great. But I'm thinking like Vienna is apparently a very beautiful place, big mountains, and I can't help but feel like I should do the show from somewhere in Vienna. The question is going to be when the hell I'm going to have the time, because there are a lot of meetings, and how that time is going to affect from there to here. Like if I have to do a show at 8:00 over there, the sun will be down, but then it'll be like 2:00 here. So you guys would like have the show at the normal time, but I would like have mountains behind me, but it would be dark. Barcelona, same idea. Although Barcelona's got a little bit more of a bigger city feel to it. I got to figure it out. I still would like to do something. Now, a Waymo ride, I don't know how I'd get that done, but that would be fun. All right. Let's see. ZTO Bro says, Russ, I swear I saw intern Andrew at Golf X in Chester Springs. I'm pretty sure that was him. I think that's where he works. I'm pretty sure it is. So if you haven't been out to Golf X, go find intern Andrew. I'm 99% sure that's where he works. I think. I'm pretty sure. All right. Now, I want to jump around a little bit, okay? And I don't know which way we're going to go first, okay? But I'm going to take you somewhere, okay? So the Eagles have this game this weekend, and it looks like there's a chance that they're going to be taking on Kenny Pickett. And so, you know, I stood around for a little bit, and I thought to myself, do I preview the game? The answer is no. Because previewing the game doesn't matter. Because the things that we expect to see out of the Eagles remain the same. And the frustrations that we have had for much of the season have remained largely the same, which I think is actually an indictment of the coaching staff, but that's just me. Now, smarter people who are paid very well to break down the all-22 footage, listening to a few of them this week, I did get the feeling that some of the anecdotal stuff that I saw, right, two-back sets, pre-snap motion, along with some of what they saw, gives me hope that Nick Sirianni has added something to this offensive playbook. And it might not be perfect, but like your one A.J. Brown perfect pass dropped in the end zone at the end of regulation last week away from the world not burning, right? But unfortunately, he dropped that pass, 1 of 3 on the night that he probably should have pulled in. And so it feels like everything's burning. I'm going to give the Eagles one more week. Now, that's not because I'm a shill. I'm clearly not compensated by the Philadelphia Eagles to do this show or to tweet on their behalf. But I live in this very weird world where I can look at a calendar and I can say that about 10 months ago, the Philadelphia Eagles played in the Super Bowl, and Jaylen Brown, who plays for the Celtics, was not in the Super Bowl. But Jalen Hurts, who was under center or in shotgun for the Philadelphia Eagles, he led the Eagles to a Super Bowl win. And it wasn't a fluke. There may have been some personnel changes, most notably Mekhi Becton not brought back on the offensive line. But his skill position guys remain the same. You still have 2 number 1 wideouts in A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. You still have a very good, dynamic tight end in Dallas Goedert. You still have a guy that I consider one of the best backs in football, Saquon Barkley. But I think that the injuries along the offensive line are largely behind why this offense has looked out of sorts. Now, again, those smarter people who break down the film, they will continue to point out to you moments where Kevin Patullo is calling plays that have 3 or 4 identical routes, a few times running parallel to one another, going about 5 yards deep and stopping. There's no cross. There's nothing to like pull a safety in or pull a linebacker out. There's nothing, right? The play design is simplistic. I want to believe that Nick Sirianni is not a total dolt, because if he is a dolt, if he's the idiot that a lot of people seem to be kind of leaning into the idea that he is, well, then the Eagles are fucked. Like the whole window's closed. If Nick Sirianni is just a boob, right, then this whole thing is over. Unless we're to believe that Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie are going to pull the plug on the Sirianni experiment at the end of the year. Which, I mean, I don't know how you can do that coming off of 2 Super Bowls in 3 years and a win 10 months ago, but I digress. I'm going to give the Eagles another week. It doesn't mean that I think that the Eagles are perfect, and it certainly doesn't mean that I think they're infallible. They've made a lot of mistakes. I just highlighted a little bit ago. A.J. Brown had some really big drops last week. I question that offensive line. I have a little bit of a question about like why at times other backs, mostly Tank Bigsby, was able to attack and run north to south and pick up yards in a way that Saquon Barkley really hasn't been able to. But I will also give Saquon Barkley the grace that this offensive line either sucks, which I don't think it does, or it's just really banged up. The entire right side is a giant question mark, right? Will Lane Johnson be back now? Will he be back for the playoffs? You have to hope so. I think Fred Johnson's done an okay job. Steen to me stinks. I don't know. I don't know what went into the calculus of deciding that he belongs. But okay, I don't think Steen is particularly good. Cam Jurgens looks hurt. Landon Dickerson is hurt. Jordan Mailata is fine. But I think Jordan Mailata probably would benefit from having a better Landon Dickerson next to him. So you have 2 guys, at least on the offensive line, that are gutting through some kind of injury, whether they want to admit it or not, in Dickerson and Jurgens. Mailata is fine. I think Fred Johnson, for the most part, is fine. Steen stinks. Okay, that's not a great offensive line, and yet they've given Jalen Hurts a clean enough pocket. Jalen's got to make better throws. Jalen has to have a better decision-making process. But I will, once again, go back to the play. Jalen Hurts to A.J. Brown, a perfect pass in the midst of a game where Jalen Hurts had an uncharacteristic number of turnovers. With the game on the line, Hurts dropped an absolute dime into the hands of A.J. Brown. Defensive back made a play, but that's a play that we've seen A.J. Brown make before. You're that catch away from the world not burning. And why is the world burning so much? The world is burning in large part because the fans are upset, but part of what the fans are so worked up from is because sports radio hosts have just delved into this pit of despair, and they are swimming through the despair like Scrooge McDuck in a giant vault of golden coins. Sports talk radio was never meant to be the place where nuance lives and thrives. There have always been people on the radio that have made you angry enough to pick up the phone and call. You've had guys like Mike Missanelli in his prime. You've had guys like Angelo Cataldi and Howard Eskin in their respective primes. You had a guy like Josh Innes, who was known for being shock jockish, and he'd get you to want to call up. You also used to have radio shows that would make you laugh and take you on the ride, like Bruno and Mays. But there's like nuance that's been lost. And we all see this, and I think we are all cognizant of the fact that media consumption has changed. I don't think it's a surprise that overall the numbers on this show have gone up since we have prioritized short-form content. Tip of the cap to Amadeo. But in order to build your audience, a big part of that right now in the current media landscape is to really go into short-form content. And there's not a lot of nuance to be had in short-form content. I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts, Search Engine, on their paid feed, incognito mode. I was listening to that show, and they were talking about how they're going to try to, expand their show. And they've got this giant listenership, right? And they're talking about how this show that they do does not translate well to short form content. And I have thoughts on that, and that doesn't matter. But they've been able to grow a big organic audience. The point of this show, even if you look at the short form stuff, I don't typically throw out ridiculously unfounded hyperbolic takes on things. If I wanted to be a sellout or a shill or whatever, the easiest thing for me to do would be to calculate, come up with 3 to 5 ridiculous takes per episode, which I certainly could do, yell and scream about them, have Amadeo clip those up to a T, and try to build an audience that is largely built on hating my takes. Now, some people will just inherently hate my takes. That's going to happen no matter what. That has been the case. I initially helped to start the original Crossing broadcast back in like 2017. I will always expect people to not like my takes. Part of the problem is that some people don't like the take, and then the take ends up being true. That actually happens a lot more than not. Sometimes I'm wrong. I'd say my hit percentage is a little bit higher. The radio people have now gone from being a subject of fodder for blogs like Crossing Broad to write about the radio war stuff, to write about the ratings and about the ratings book and who's picking up who is gaining ground on which show. Are the stations overall down? Are the stations overall up? And then the occasional shot back and forth, most notably years ago, Josh Innes taking shots at Missanelli, sending black roses to Missanelli at the Fanatic studio. That has all changed because both of these stations have now really tried to go into short form content. And I think they're right to do it. Like, I'm going to be really clear because we're going to get into the thing between Marks and Giglio. Sports talk radio as a medium will always, in some way, shape, or form, exist. The way that it exists, though, is going to change. It already has changed, right? The listening habits of people has changed, right? It goes back to AM radio to FM radio to then, I think the Fanatic was the first station in town, sports station, to podcast their episodes, to make them available in their own app, right? And now, if you want to, you can go back and listen to a 97.5 or a WIP show at any point that you want, and you can go listen to it in their respective app. And you can listen to it that way. You can skip through segments. You can go through it that way. So media consumption is different. You don't only have to sit down at a radio and listen live, nor do you have to just sit at your device and stream it live. You can go back after the fact and listen to it. But they have both stations have clearly decided to lean into short form content, which again is fine. But there is no nuance. In short form content, you will get a ton of engagement when you throw out ridiculous shit. And that is where things have gotten to, right? And sometimes on the show, I pull up stuff. I brought up Bill Colarulo stuff before, and John Kincaid stuff before, and Sal Chunas stuff before. And I think once or twice Missanelli when he was still doing the midday show at 97.5. And then on WIP side, I brought up stuff from their morning show, the afternoon show, the midday show. I hold no ill will for any of the people who are doing radio in the city right now. I've met a good amount of these people. They seem like decent human beings to talk to. And I think Kevin Kincaid over at Crossing Broad, like this past week, did a whole write-up about how a lot of these people that like you interact with on social media and might think is an asshole or a douche or a dick or disingenuous, that those people are actually decent human beings. And to sit down and have a beer with one of them or have coffee or just chat a little bit, maybe at an ice cream place or at a playground, they are decent people. But then they get on the air, and the parts of them being on the air that ultimately gets clipped into short form content is almost like carnival barker stuff. The kind of stuff that I used to rail on Michael Barkan for doing. Carnival barker shit. Lowest common denominators shit. And unfortunately, that is where things have really kind of gone off the rails, because it's one thing when you do a 2-hour-long show or a 4-hour-long show, 3-hour-long show, whatever it is. And of that show, you clip a couple of things, and then those are the things that go viral on TikTok or Instagram Reels or Facebook Reels or YouTube Shorts or wherever, right? That's one thing. What it feels like has been happening more and more is that instead of the content dictating the short form that gets the engagement, it's now gearing the main show to what can we turn into the short form that will create engagement. It's no longer just doing a show that is in some way, shape, or form fair and balanced, and then finding things that you can clip and promote. It's how do we put together a show that will have a lot of clippable moments and put those out. And so what you're seeing is this pit of despair and this thing that I keep coming back to, that I don't believe that a lot of these people believe the stuff they're saying on the air. I don't. I fundamentally do not think that they believe what they're saying. And if you have the opportunity at some point in the next week or so, go listen to Max Kellerman on Bill Simmons' show. Go listen to Nick Wright on Bill Simmons' show. There's this idea out there of Do you want to become the person who has 5 or 6 things a day on a show that is a counter narrative, that is against the group think, the group understanding of how good a player is or not? And if you have 5 or 6, like Skip Bayless always did, is that real? Are you just being disingenuous for the sake of having an argument on TV? I think a lot of these people on the radio right now are finding themselves in this weird tug of war because some of them want to remain somewhat balanced and some of them have gone fully in on being out of their damn minds. And that takes me to what happened this week. Because I actually like when the radio stations take shots at each other. I like when they call each other out. It could be the pro wrestling fan in me. But I love when a WIP host calls out a Fanatic host. I love when a Fanatic host calls out a WIP host. I don't care if it's on the radio. I don't care if it's on Twitter. I don't care where it's at. I like the idea of these people butting heads. It's a competition. There are a finite number of people who are going to listen to your show at any time. Go ahead and fight for it, man. Have fun. Enjoy. And I think for 97.5, when you're the challenger brand, you kind of have to engage in this stuff. Remember, Bill Colarulo a while ago did the whole thing about make the switch. Well, Jon Marks kind of did something similar. So I think that the first thing that we should do is go out to the Joe Giglio clip, the original thing that really got a lot of the discourse started, because this ultimately made its way to national news. It made its way to Get Up on ESPN. It was something that Dan Orlovsky, Peter Schrager talked about. So I want to start with the Joe Giglio clip that really seemed to light the world on fire this week. And it was this notion that Sunday is maybe Jalen Hurts' last day, his last game to be the starter of this team. Let's go listen to Joe. We'll react, and then we'll go to the Jon Marks of it all.
Eagles, I would start Jalen Hurts on Sunday against the Las Vegas Raiders. He's the quarterback on Sunday. You used the word yesterday, earned. I do think he's earned the right to start the game on Sunday. He's been the quarterback here for years. They've won a lot. He had a horrific game. He's off.
They made it to 2 Super Bowls, and they won a Super Bowl 10 months ago. Yes, they've won some games, including the most important one. Okay.
Bad month. But yeah, he gets to start the game on Sunday. But that's the end of where I go with earn, deserve, and all those kind of words. As this season progresses, it is on the table for me that I would pull the plug. If he keeps playing the way he has the last month, and let's be clear, over the last 5 games.
So let's kind of take that, dissect it a second. So he's fine with the idea that this game against the Raiders is one that Hurts has earned. But if he plays poorly again, he hasn't earned the next start. Okay, let's keep going.
This is a bottom 5 quarterback in the NFL. That's the way he's playing compared to all the other quarterbacks. So if he doesn't pick it up and the offense continues to struggle and he looks like he did on Monday, I have to pull the plug, and I have to do it for a few reasons. Number one, I owe it to the...
Does pull the plug mean like mid-game, that Tanner McKee should start the second half of a game? Does pull the plug mean for the following week? All right, let's...
Other 52 guys. They're still playing their asses off, especially that defense. I can't let the season just go down the drain because of one player. And I would say that about any position.
Let's make something clear. If you make a change at quarterback, if you pull Jalen Hurts out of the game against the Raiders, like if the offense isn't performing well and you pulled Jalen Hurts out of that game on Sunday, you are giving up on the season and you are giving up on those other 52 players, because you can think that Tanner McKee is a good player. Tanner McKee is not Jalen Hurts. Tanner McKee is not going to be the savior. Tanner McKee isn't going to come in and have a Nick Folesian run to a Super Bowl. And even if he does, right? Just play it out hypothetically for a second. We'll bring Joe back here in a second. Like hypothetically, if you are of the belief that Tanner McKee is a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts, which we've never actually seen, but if you believe that in your true heart of hearts, I think you're nuts, but if you believe that, then what's the end game? Because if Tanner McKee were to take over for Jalen Hurts and say they go on a nice playoff run, or they win their first playoff game and then they lose, but it's not Tanner McKee's fault, then what? They committed a ton of money to Jalen Hurts long term. There's a massive dead cap number. Is Tanner McKee your quarterback next year? Because, well, then he's going to want a lot of money, or he's at least going to want some money. So then you're going to have an unholy amount of money tied up to Jalen Hurts, and then you're going to also have to pay this guy that you're ready to deem the franchise quarterback going forward to Tanner McKee. Who's that good for? Is that good for those other 52 players? Is that good for the fan base going forward? Like, I don't think there's anybody right now who looks at Tanner McKee and says he is a 100% surefire reincarnation of Tom Brady or Peyton Manning at peak powers, or even Andrew Luck at peak powers, Aaron Rodgers at peak powers, Lamar Jackson at peak powers, Patrick Mahomes at peak powers. Like, no, nobody. It's just people are frustrated that Jalen Hurts is coming off of an uncharacteristically bad game after spending much of the season complaining that he doesn't attempt to throw balls into tight windows and that he doesn't attempt to throw balls over the middle of the field. Well, he did last week. It didn't work out, and now those people are ready to crucify him for a totally different reason. Okay, we're going to go back to Joe. This idea, again, that somehow it's unfair to the other 52 guys to roll with your franchise quarterback is silly, but we'll continue.
Position. So I owe it to the other guys. Hugh, I think back to 2018. The Eagles were struggling coming off a Super Bowl victory. They were 5-6.
Yes.
Now, they spun it to us that Carson Wentz had a stress fracture in his back and they were sitting him down. Whatever. You can believe what you want to believe. They put Nick Foles back in and they went on a run. And that's in my head that, like, with better quarterback play, this team could be way better right now than they are. And
the people who get paid to break down the actual game plan and the all-22 film will agree that Hurts didn't have a good game last week. They also would say that this being put at the feet of the quarterback as the most important factor for why it hasn't worked is ridiculous. We'll continue.
I know there's a lot of stuff. I'm sure you're going to bring up a lot of this, like what happens then, right? Like the ramifications to benching Jalen Hurts.
Yes.
I understand.
They're huge.
They're huge.
There you go, Hugh.
But I just want to bring this to the table because for me, this is the only thing that matters. If the Eagles don't know he's their quarterback next year, I don't think the ramifications are.
Yo, if they don't know that he's their quarterback next year, Howie really fucked up. And then in that case, all the Howie worship needs to come to an end, because if the Eagles don't know that Jalen Hurts is supposed to be the quarterback next year, then that means that Howie will have drafted two quarterbacks high in their respective drafts, a first round for Carson Wentz and a second round for Jalen Hurts, given them money, an extension before he needed to, and then has to try to figure out how to move those contracts. Like, the Howie worship would have to stop instantly. All right, we'll finish this up.
Strong as some might. And my point on that is, if they have decided right now, we have to go look for another quarterback, then I don't care about the other ramifications. I'm just focusing on this year. Now, if they believe he's their quarterback for the next 5 years, no matter what, then all right, then it's way harder to bench him.
Well, no shit. So that's actually where I get frustrated, because you can't get so tunnel vision on this season that you're willing to blow up the next 5 or 6. Like, I will continue to stress the point that I don't want to see this Eagles team become what the current Phillies team is or be what the 08 Phillies were, right? The 08 Phillies were an awesome story. And then for the next 3 years, it felt like they kept adding, getting better. And then the results got worse and worse. But they won a championship, so we still smile when we think about that 08 team. This current Phillies crop felt like they were adding and getting better, and it felt like every year they should be getting better and getting back to a World Series, and they still haven't won one. And I do have a feeling that, especially if this Phillies team doesn't win a World Series, we're not going to look back as fondly on them. This Eagles team, we saw get to a Super Bowl, lose, have a terrible season the next year, get bounced really early in the playoffs, and then rebound from that and win a Super Bowl. So you're still looking at a team that went to 2 Super Bowls in 3 years. I would like to see a team that has a wide open window. And a big part of that is having a quarterback who doesn't turn the ball over a lot. Okay. Can we just have a moment real quick? Carson Wentz wasn't a terrible quarterback. Carson Wentz had a season where he looked like a legitimate MVP candidate. Carson Wentz had the physical ability to throw a ball anywhere on the field, to throw a ball into triple coverage into the tightest window you've ever seen. But Carson Wentz also had a propensity for trying to force the ball into those tight windows because he'd occasionally have success doing it. And I would always say, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because you can physically get the ball into that tight window doesn't mean you should try to do it all the time, because it would lead to turnovers. And when Carson Wentz was falling apart post-injury, the thing that people kept complaining about is he fumbles a lot, he's throwing a lot of interceptions. So the Eagles replaced him with a guy who doesn't really turn the ball over a lot, last week notwithstanding, doesn't throw a lot of stupid interceptions, doesn't throw it into double, triple coverage, doesn't try to strong arm a tight window throw, has had some issues with fumbles at different points in his career, but for the most part protects the ball. You weren't happy with Carson Wentz trying to do it one way. Jalen Hurts does it an entirely different way, and now people are complaining about the way that he does it. Maybe fans are just fickle. Like, maybe that's the actual problem. Maybe a lot of the people who then engage with a lot of that content, maybe they're just fickle. They're never happy with anything. Maybe. I don't know. And that gets us to what ultimately was said coming off of that clip, which is where Jon Marks, who previously worked with Joe Giglio at WIP, decided to take a shot at night, a little bit before 9 p.m. on Wednesday night, and he quote tweeted this clip that was going all over the place. And Marks said the following: if you haven't heard, I'm back on 97.5 The Fanatic from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. If you want to say no to this kind of radio, give me a try. I like Joe G. He's a good dude, but this is embarrassing. He doesn't believe what he's saying. It's deliberate and calculated. Fake take radio at its finest. If you want to listen to professional wrestling on the radio, this is the station, meaning WIP. If you want the city to continue to live up to its toxic sports reputation, keep listening and supporting this. That's a pretty tough shot. That's a stiff shot. Is it wrong? No. I'm not convinced that Joe believes what he said. I'm not convinced that what's said on the afternoon shows at respective stations are what those guys believe. I'm not sure that what's said on morning shows at each station are what those guys believe. I think, again, there are some that are trying to straddle that fence. They're trying to walk the tightrope on being engagement-heavy content creators and being fair and balanced radio people. And something will give. And then we will see over time whether or not that bears out in the ratings books. But as we always say, especially during Eagles season, it is going to be hard for 97.5 to really gain a lot of ground against WIP because WIP has the exclusive rights to the Eagles games, and they pretty much have an exclusive in place where they're the only ones who get the active players or coaches, which I don't think is entirely right, but that is the reality. So here's my thing that I'll throw out to all of you. One, do you think that these people believe the stuff they say? And two, if you think they're disingenuous, has it led you to turn off sports talk radio? Because I can tell you definitively, there was a time that I would listen on the apps or listen on my computer while I was working. And I have largely turned off both stations. My only real exposure to those stations is through this short form content. And every time I see a host put out a ridiculous take that I consider to be engagement baiting, it reinforces my belief that that medium needs a change in a significant way. Doesn't mean that anybody needs to lose their jobs. It means that there needs to be a rethinking of how this is being done. What I'm actually more interested in is this, because I don't think that putting that engagement bait out there, putting out a hot take that a host might not believe because it's going to play well on social media, I don't think that necessarily is going to lead to tens of thousands of people breaking their habit of listening to a podcast or music in the car and switching to a sports talk station. But I do wonder, on aggregate, since the stations have started going more into the short form content game, have they actually seen the ratings on the shows increase significantly? Maybe I'll bring Kincaid on at some point. Not John Kincaid, Kevin Kincaid. I want to have somebody on who's looking at the ratings books every quarter. I want to know legitimately, have the ratings of these shows increased significantly since going the engagement farming route? And if not, the question is, why continue to do it? Because I can tell you that, like, the likelihood of WIP and 97.5 making enough money off of TikTok or engagement on Twitter or on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube Shorts, like, the money that would be generated there is negligible. So then it just kind of comes back to, why are they doing it? And maybe we'll go into that next week. I don't know. We'll find out. I saw there are a lot of comments over here, but I'm looking at the time and I'm realizing we still have to get to the debacle from last night. And the debacle had to do with your team, your town, your Philadelphia Flyers. So the Flyers welcomed the Vegas Golden Knights to town. And I did a show yesterday, a very brief one, informing everyone that Carter Hart wasn't starting and also that Carter Hart wouldn't be made available to the media. And I offered my thoughts there. And I'd rather not spend any more time talking about Carter Hart on this show. The Flyers played a very tight game against the Vegas Golden Knights. In an odd set of circumstances, they mirrored one another's shots on goal each period, 5-9-5. They had the same amount of shots each period, leading to the same total shot total through regulation. The game goes to overtime. And oddly enough, I feel pretty confident in the Flyers in overtime because they have enough guys who can handle the puck. And we always say it's a possession battle. It almost feels like lacrosse. That in that 5-minute period, the Flyers can typically get enough possession, enough opportunities that they can either win the game or they go to the shootout where they've had a ton of success because Trevor Zegras has essentially been a cheat code. And whether it's Dan Vladar or Sam Ersson in net, the Flyers have had really, really great performances in net during shootouts. So I'm watching the game unfold last night, and it never felt like Vegas was really pulling away in a significant way. So you go, all right, can you get it to overtime and get a point? Flyers force overtime, they get a point. You're feeling pretty good about it. You don't see Matvei Michkov on the ice. They make, I think, 1 or 2 changes, and then eventually Travis Konecny comes out. Konecny gets the puck around center ice. He starts to head back toward his own net, and he kind of goes out for a skate a couple of times, right? And I don't know if that was because they were trying to make another change or what they were trying to set up, but Konechny's kind of going for a skate in front of his own net, and then he loses the puck, and it is a boneheaded play. They're like mistakes happen, but that can't happen in that part of the ice at that point of overtime where you theoretically could hang on and go play in the shootout where you've been sensational. So Konechny commits this terrible error. In the midst of it, if you go back and watch the play, Sean Couturier doesn't do himself a lot of favors from a hustle perspective, getting back and trying to win back the puck, which looks bad. And Jack Eichel completes an incredible pass, and it gets potted in the back of the net, and the Flyers lose. What you may not have seen on TV, because I don't know what they showed, is as soon as Konechny loses that puck, can't win it back, puck goes in the back of the net, Konechny skates away from everyone else and slams his stick down and takes a very slow skate around the rink because he knows that the result really fell on his shoulders, that he fucked up in a big way. And he was upset with himself. And I forget who the teammate was. Somebody came over and like tried to talk to him and it's like, yo, it's okay. Like we're in this together, that kind of thing. So in the moment, I'm watching, I'm going, that's a terrible play. And it is. And at the same time, you can also kind of zoom out and go, all right, you got a point against Vegas, which isn't a terrible result. Now, could they have gotten 2? They could have. Do I think they might have deserved 2 points last night? I think that there's a case to be made that maybe they didn't deserve it, but they certainly could have gotten 2 points. So it's a disappointment to lose that point. But if you'd gone into the game and said, hey, Flyers are going to force overtime and they're going to walk away with a point, you'd feel okay about it. But it comes back to this question about Rick Tocchet and Rick Tocchet's use of Matvei Michkov, because I raised this concern last night on the Press Row show, and I was told that, well, Michkov can't skate, and you need guys who can skate in overtime. And for as much as I criticize John Tortorella, and I stand by my criticism, I will also point out that John Tortorella wasn't really afraid to use Matvei Michkov in overtimes. And Tocchet's usage of Michkov has been very odd, we'll say. And to this point in the season, I understand the concerns around Michkov's conditioning and his physical ability right now, and the fact that he himself has come out and said that he plans on staying in the area and that he's going to work his ass off in February to try to catch up to everybody. I get it. But when you look at Michkov on the night, in all situations, right? Just in terms of time on ice among forwards, Matvei Michkov was one, he played a total of 13 minutes and 46 seconds, which is about 1 minute and 6 seconds more than Carl Grundstrom, which is roughly about 1.5 minutes more than Nikita Grabenkin. That's not good enough. Now, if you wanted to say, hey, what about, the amount of times that the Flyers have to kill penalties? It didn't happen a lot last night. It wasn't a mistake-free game, but it certainly wasn't a heavily penalized game. So that's not it. And then you look at the power play. You go, all right, did Michkov get to play in the power play? He did. Played 2 minutes and 51 seconds with a man advantage, which was still less than Bobby Brink, which was still less than Travis Konecny, still less than Trevor Zegras. Now, I'd expect Zegras to be in there. He's one of your most dynamic offensive players, good skater, great vision, can execute at a high level. But Michkov not getting a single shift in overtime is concerning. Now, you could make the argument because of his skating, he shouldn't be out there for the first shift. Maybe. Couldn't you build something in where if you lose the faceoff, Michkov stays on the bench, but if you win the faceoff, you immediately have a player come off? The same way that the Flyers are afraid to have Trevor Zegras take faceoffs, so they have Christian Dvorak take the faceoffs, and then those guys effectively switch positions. And Dvorak goes back to being a wing, and Zegras typically goes back to being a center. Couldn't you figure something out? Now, there's also a thought out there that maybe the next shift, maybe even what Konecny was setting up for, was for Michkov to come on the ice. My problem is this. When you get to the end of a game, especially if it's a game that you lose, you want to know in your heart of hearts that you've done everything you can to win that game. And when the game is over, and when a mistake is made like the one that Konecny committed, and you look back on it and say, did we do everything we could to win? And you look at that final shift chart at the end of the game, and you see that Matvei Michkov, a guy who is very clearly meant to be a big part of your core and one of your potential big-time star players for a decade, when that guy doesn't see the ice for whatever reason in overtime, you have not done what needed to be done. You have not put your best foot forward. You have not given your team the best chance to win the game. So that was last night. And I see the question, why does skating matter? JH saying he had so many overtime game-winning goals last year. I think he had 3 last year. I don't buy into this notion that his skating is a reason for him not to play overtime. I get that there's a lot of open ice. I get the fact that he's not a responsible defensive player. I get all of that. Then get possession and get his ass on the ice. Figure it out. Scheme it better. Get him out there. He needs to be on the ice. With all that extra space, he should be able to create at a high level and hopefully win you a game. He also has arguably the best or one of the best shots on the team. He needs to play. All right, that's it. Jim Cochran asks, serious question, how's Michkov's fitness still a topic of conversation in December? If that's truly still an issue, doesn't he deserve to sit? This idea is out there that your conditioning needs to be at a certain level during training camp, and then during preseason, and then during the start of the season. And Michkov started so far behind that he's working to play catch up. I don't know. By February, right, by the time the Olympics are over, when they come back from the Olympic break, Michkov has to look like he is on par with everyone else. And if he doesn't, then it will be a serious concern. Right now, I'm fine. I'm okay with him being a little bit behind. He's got to have that fixed by February. There's no excuse at that point. All right, so I will be back on Monday. Snow the Goalie, Press Row Show. There is a show on Saturday. I don't know if I'll be there. I'm thinking I won't be there. But Saturday, there is a Press Row Show. We are going to give a tip of the cap to the saint of the family, my wife, who completed her master's. And so we're going to go celebrate her on Saturday. So as much as I love Bundy and intern Andrew, I love my wife more. And so our family will go celebrate her and getting that master's done. We're going to give her a roaring round of applause. We'll get some stick taps above the desk. And in the meantime, we can go back and forth. Me, you, and all the people. We can go back and forth on Twitter this weekend at Joy on Broad. Otherwise, I'll be back here on Monday with the Russ Joy Show. You can find the show on YouTube, Facebook, and X, and wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm going to go take a nap. Actually, no, I'm not. The kids are coming home from school. There's no time to nap. I'll sleep when I'm dead. Hopefully many, 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 many years from now. In the meantime, thank you for checking out the Russ Joy Show. Until Monday, this has been the Russ Joy Show, and I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. Have a fantastic Friday, a wonderful weekend, and I will see you on an absolutely marvelous Monday following an Eagles win over the Raiders. Till then, talk to you soon.